Hello and welcome back. Today we're talking about S3 storage classes. And we'll start off with the main five. There's the S3 standard, S3 standard infrequent access, S3 Glacier instant retrieval, S3 Glacier flexible retrieval, S3 Glacier deep archive. As you go more to the left on this diagram, the storage is more expensive, but the access to the data is cheaper. So Amazon will charge you for storage of data and access, how many times you access, how frequently you access it. So to the left, storage more expensive, access cheaper. To the right, storage is cheaper because you're storing for the long term, but access is more expensive. You're not meant to be accessing it, those classes of storage very frequently. So conceptually, you can think of it this way. Storage costs go down as you progress to the right of this diagram, and access costs go up. Now, we'll talk about pricing a bit further down the line. Let's look at these classes in a bit more detail. First of all, they have shared characteristics, and these are that they're replicated across 3 availability zones at least. That's for the safety of your data. Their durability, as long as that region where the bucket is in doesn't collapse, the durability is 11 nines, which means that if you store 1 billion objects, then over 100 years, you're likely not to lose even one. And moving data is into the bucket is free. This is across all S3 buckets, regardless of class. Now, drilling further into this, we can identify 2 groups. The group on the left is these 3 buckets, and the group on the right, or these 3 classes, and the group on the right is these 2 classes. The shared characteristics of the group on the left are instant access. You get access instantly to your data, and these can be made publicly available. The group on the right, the access is delayed. So first from here, data has to be retrieved into a temporary bucket of S3 standard infrequent access class, and then which will later be deleted once you're done accessing your data. And that takes time. And also these cannot be made publicly available. Now let's go further into each class. The first class on the left, S3 standard. There's no minimum duration for how long you have to store the data. Store it for as long or as short as you like. And there's no minimum size of an object that you'll be charged for. It can be as small as you like. The use case here is data which is accessed frequently, your regular day-to-day use. Now the second bucket, S3 standard infrequent access, is designed for data that you access less frequently. And here we have a 30-day minimum storage of an object. Of course, you can move it out earlier, but you will be charged for a 30-day minimum. And there's a 128 kilobyte per object minimum charge. So if you store a 5 kilobyte object, you'll be still charged for 128 kilobytes for that specific object. And so the use cases here are, of course, data that is not accessed frequently. And also very important, it's not lots of tiny objects. So even if you have lots of tiny objects that are not accessed frequently, it might be better to store them in S3 standard than in S3 standard infrequent access, simply because of that minimum charge. Something to keep in mind. Next is the third class, which is S3 Glacier instant retrieval. Here we have a 90-day minimum storage, and again that minimum object charge. And the use case here is data which is accessed quarterly because of the 90-day minimum. And now moving on to the right, we have S3 Glacier flexible retrieval. Same duration, 90-day minimum. There's a 40 kilobyte object minimum charge. You should use this to archive data that's accessed once per year. And here the retrieval times, because again there's no instant access, there's retrieval times. There's expedited retrieval 1 to 5 minutes, standard 3 to 5 hours, and bulk 5 to 12 hours. And of course, the faster, the more expensive it will be. And finally, the S3 Glacier deep archive, 180-day minimum charge, 40 kilobytes per object. This is used to archive data that is almost never needed, for example, that you have to keep for regulatory purposes. And the retrieval here is standard 12 hours, bulk 48 hours. Now, there is one more class that we need to mention right now, and that is S3 one zone IA. And it fits in this diagram over here right next to S3 standard IA. It's also an infrequent access, but it's a one zone infrequent access. So this is our 6th class. And as the name suggests, it just uses one zone. So it's exactly the same as S3 standard infrequent access, but it only uses one availability zone, and that saves you on cost, but it does make it less reliable. You still get the 11 nines of durability, but if that availability zone fails, then you will lose your data. And the use case here is replaceable data, which is accessed infrequently. So there are storage classes. So this is the page for pricing, and I've highlighted here a few things. So here's storage. And as you can see, S3, there's S3 standard, there's infrequent access, one zone infrequent access, Glacier instant retrieval, Glacier flexible, Glacier deep archive. And so you can see the storage cost, it goes down as we progress from left to right on our diagram. Now, if you go to requests and data retrievals, this is how often you request to access the data. With S3 standard, there's the cost, and then as you can see, it starts going up as we go from left to right on our diagram. And finally, there's also data transfer. All data transfer into S3 is $0 per gigabyte, and data transfer out, it doesn't matter on the class. It doesn't depend on the class, it just depends on where you're transferring it to. So there we go. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. See you next time.